Ron Moore, this isn't just any show. Outlander has sparked something ferocious. There was an event last night the TV Academy had at NYU, and the people outside were like they were attending a rock concert. They were going crazy. What is it?
There's just a passionate fan base for the show. You know, it started with the books. The books had a pretty dedicated, readership for 20 some odd years. So we sort of started with that as our base, and then we've sort of expanded from then. And I think everybody sort of responds to a lot of the same elements. It's a classic, good, page turner, and it's a ripping good yarn, as they say. I think we've got a really interesting lead actress and main character, and Jamie is really spectacular. And I think the setting draws people in. It's not sort of a period of history I think people are that familiar with, so I think there's a lot of things about it that tend to surprise them. And it's an evolving show. The story always changes. It's never just the same. We're not in a castle every episode. It's sort of always moving and changing and evolving, and I think that's sort of unique in TV.
But it also has this unapologetic romanticism in a very cynical age that we live in.
Yeah.
And I think that is a huge part of it, just as an observer of all of this thing. And you are, I think, smart to just pursue that in the same way that opera does. And you've had experience with this. Battlestar Galactica is space opera, as they like to say, right? So what is opera for television today, if that is the secret ingredient of this show?
Well, I think, there's a largeness to the story, and there's a largeness to the emotions. And I think, we are unapologetic about there's a certain, this is a time of honor, it's a time of idealism, in the past, and I think we sort of lean into that, and we don't try to make fun of it, and we don't wink at the audience, and we take the setting seriously and take the story seriously. And I think oftentimes, TV shows, especially a period piece, might feel like, well, if we take this too seriously, the audience will think we're ridiculous. So they'll try to make it hip or contemporary or try to wink and nod at the audience. Hey, we're not taking this that seriously, folks, even though we're in these clothes. And I think, personally, I think that's a mistake, because I think then the audience doesn't want to engage with the story. They don't feel like giving themselves over emotionally to the characters if they don't believe the characters really believe what's happening to them. So, I think that is one of our secret ingredients, is just take the story seriously, take the characters seriously. It doesn't mean you can't have fun. It doesn't mean you can't have humor in the show. It just means that, embrace where you are and act as though it's real.
The fun of season 2 had a lot to do with the time travel component. And as a viewer, you're watching this realizing, oh, if they do that, this is going to happen. It's going to screw up that. And in a way, I've seen up to episode 6, I think, now. I think in a way, you even take away from viewing this, wait a minute, if they were never there in the first place, it would have gone differently.
Yeah.
So in a way, I think the audience is more empowered and involved in the show than season 1. Do you agree with that?
I think so. I think, season 1 was setting up a lot of things. It was setting up the core concept, the fundamental relationship between Claire and Jamie, and we only sort of touched on the time travel aspect of the show a couple of times, really. Only really in the first episode, and then a couple of places along the way to sort of remind you that of the core concept. Season 2, the time travel aspect is much more sort of baked into the plot and the story and what the characters care about. And I think it's good that the audience is reminded of, oh yeah, how do these events in the past potentially affect what we think of as the present, or at least the mid-century present, in the 20th century. And I think that just keeps the audience on their toes and remembering sort of, oh, wait a minute, it's not as simple as just we've gone into this 18th century world. There's actually this other man, there's the Frank in the 20th century, and there's, how the events may or may not affect him. What about the history of Scotland, and what Claire's knowledge, how does that play into the Jacobite Rebellion, and will they be able to change it? So I think it's an interesting way of engaging the audience on multiple levels now.
I haven't read the books, and I don't know what's beyond in season 2, and I don't know if you can answer this question, but I do see something that we all see in this show, and that is Claire is so much more in love with Jamie now than with Frank. Does it ever flip back, or is Frank just screwed?
Well, Frank has somewhat of a tragic story, yes. I mean, I think one of the things we've been at pains to do in the show is to make sure that Frank is legitimate, that you understand her connection to Frank. All season 1, most of it, she was trying to just get back to him. even as she was falling in love with Jamie. And in season 2, you see that while he's not her soulmate, this is a good guy that's really trying to do the right thing, that really does genuinely, with all of his heart, love this woman. And it's his tragedy that he's not the soulmate in her life, but there is a legitimacy to the triangle between these three characters, across time. And Frank's, raising a Brianna and his accepting Claire back into his life after she returned to the 20th century in the first episode is, we continue to sort of make that a complicated story as season 2 unfolds.